Well, folks, I'm about to address a very sensitive topic, but there's a new movement on the left that I think that you're going to start hearing a lot more about in the coming weeks, months, and even years. The media is calling it groundbreaking. A recent report from the California Reparations Task Force that is spurring a movement to dress up welfare in a whole new wrapper. Beware. A point-by-point refutation of the various claims and the carefully curated omissions and unworkable recommendations in the 500-page manifesto released in California cannot be cogently undertaken here. I don't have the time for that. But what is clear in the aggregate, in my view, however, is that the report confirms that the left in America want Black Americans to live with the badge of slavery in perpetuity, not just among themselves, but in the eyes of the larger population. Folks, Jim Crow didn't die, didn't go away. It transformed into the welfare state. The Great Society programs created a successor to segregation just by other means. Welfare, 20 million abortions, and the collapse of the black family, first highlighted by Democrat Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1965, have contributed to the dulling of the American black community's economic power that they deserve to have. Now, after more than 50 years of failure at ending poverty, equalizing educational opportunities, and manufacturing economic advancement, the left has nowhere to turn but a new scheme like reparations to keep the toxic system in place. And the results would be no different. Giving people other people's money has never worked to create economic advancement or solve significant societal problems. Why would the left care anyway? The American far left is dominated by wealthy whites. Even a sham charity like Black Lives Matter was funded by wealthy white leftists. Any state, local, or national lobbying push for reparations will also likely be funded by white leftists. The insidious nature of the reparations scheme is severalfold. First, reparations are demeaning on its face. It's another blatant attempt to try and bribe black voters. The left is seeing the erosion of support from minority groups, and they're getting desperate. Second, reparations will increase resentment between blacks and other ethnic groups, causing greater ethnic isolation and segregation. Such antipathy will be welcomed by the far left in America, who often see societal strife and division as pathways to more government control. Third, calls for reparations are merely a rebranding of welfare at a time when Democrats have been forced to pull back the reins on their larger plans to advance giveaways. If universal basic income is the brass ring of the leftist political movement in America, the successful implementation of a reparations program is a close second. The left is panicking. Taxpayers are waking up to the fact that welfare doesn't work. Public housing in this country is largely a disgrace. Urban schools continue to fail despite increased annual investment. Too many black Americans who have been promised the moon for decades live lives punctuated by violence, abuse, drugs, prison, death, and multi-generational dependency that ensures a repeat of that vicious cycle. After all these years of trillions in spending, the black poverty and unemployment rates have largely been flat since the 1970s. Efforts to manufacture empowerment through affirmative action and quotas have failed as well. The California report blames systemic racism for the fact that despite being only 13% of the population, black Americans tragically comprise more than 55% of all homicides in 2020. The racial puppeteering on the part of Democrats for all these years have left blacks with a mirage of equality. Even the first black president failed his own community. For all of the symbolism of his election, Barack Obama left office with more than 500,000 more black families living below the poverty line and black homicide rates on the rise. America's black community doesn't need symbolic gestures. They don't need more presidential appointments or statues to George Floyd. They don't need schemes to buy them off. They need to be treated with the respect that every American deserves by having the shackles of government taking off their community once and for all. Many Democrats don't seem to have any interest in that at all. All Americans must appreciate that the eventual California reparations program, whatever form it may take after constitutional challenges, is a message to leftist activists across America that this method of government expansion is worth attempting, not just at a state level, but at a municipal, school district, or other jurisdictional level. Expect this effort to infect the politics in areas far beyond the Golden State. They're going to try. Keep an eye out for it. Any acceptance of this scheme is the intentional shredding of the Constitution and Martin Luther King's oft-ignored prayer for the nation, that we judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. It would be another in a long list of efforts by Democrats to diminish, deceive, segregate, and control America's black population. It's a ruse, folks, and it's one that should be repugnant to every American.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.